Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to a special edition of Coast to Coast Packers. We had to change it up on you guys a little bit, get ourselves one of the marquee names in Packers content, and a writer at the Acme Packer Company, former, if I correct, XFL exec or coach, I want to say, right? My man has done.
Technically, I was director of analytics, but I was watching film. I was watching a
Analytics.
lot of NFL preseason film. Is what I was doing.
David Gettman's favorite guy, right? Analytics, just on the computer, right? Justis Mosqueda, thank you so much for joining us, man. We're so honored and proud to have you on here. And man, I've been talking to Justis forever now. It's the first time I'm actually meeting him, so I'm a little starstruck, So, how you doing, man? How's it going?
Don't be starstruck. Once people start asking me for handshakes or autographs or something like that when I go to league events, that's when I'm going to stop going. So don't be starstruck at all. I am
okay. Well, I want to hype you up, man. So don't worry, it's going to happen one way.
I'm doing great, man. It's not burning hot on the West Coast yet. It's coming. It's starting tomorrow. So I've been outside just kind of enjoying walking around. Doing all that stuff for the past couple of days because I know I'm gonna want to be inside once it starts becoming 90 and stuff this week. So
yeah, I was gonna say I have family in California, down by the Sacramento Yuba City area, and they're sending me their stuff's 100 degrees, and I'm just holy crap! And I'm here in Leesburg, Virginia, and we're dying with 80s and 90s. So trust me, I'm I have nothing to complain about right now.
86 up by us on Sunday, and that's kind of unheard of for being almost in Canada.
on the border. So everyone, Amar Desai here, and I got my man Bernie Bango, and we're gonna just chop it up with Mr. Justis and see what he thinks about. Just actually, before we get into any of the Packer stuff, I want Justis kind of talk a little bit about himself. I know how much he loves talking about himself. He's probably one of the most modest guys that we know. Just kind of how you became a Packers fan, and B, just your story about how you kind of got into this whole NFL climate. I remember when we talked about it on Twitter, I remember the story that kind of got you into it, and I want you to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, so how I became a Packers fan, complete troll job by my dad. Congratulations to him. My grandma on my mom's side, so her mom, was a big Broncos fan, and he was a Falcons fan like Brett Favre when he came out and all that stuff, and thought he was going to be the Falcons quarterback of the future. That didn't end up panning out, but he ended up still being a Favre fan. And once he got into Green Bay and stuff, Super Bowl, she ends up coming and visiting us. And he thought it was funny to buy me a Favre jersey when I must have been 3 years old or something like that. So my first game I ever watched was, a brutal loss to the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl. And just kind of was I have a Favre jersey. I'm a Packers. They were on the TV all the time, in the 90s and stuff like that. And there's still I'm originally from Hood River, which is a little east of Portland. There's still this Portland-Seattle rivalry that people don't get, where they're why isn't Portland all Seahawks fans? And we're we hate them. They call us little brother. Why are we getting? It's 3-4 hours away. Why would we be fans of them? So we're kind of a little bit in the middle of nowhere in terms of fandom, right?
Okay.
There's a lot of Seahawks fans, there's a lot of Niners fans, but there's a lot of Packers fans too, just because they've been on TV for so long. How often has that Fox afternoon game been the national game, and we're playing the Cowboys and all this stuff. Yeah, exactly. We're getting Troy and Joe Buck. Yeah, so just became a Packers fan that way. I think I got into Twitter probably 2010, 2011.
Yeah. Okay.
And at that point, it was still pretty low information.
Oh yeah,
it was a lot of the writers from a schematic standpoint and stuff like that, didn't have the information that high school players did, really, especially in the trenches and stuff.
Right.
I played center and D end in high school. So I kind of got in doing line breakdown stuff. And then it was also pretty low information as far as analytics stuff. Now I think the analytics people look at me and are you're a film guy. But when I started, people were you're an analytics guy. So it's kind of weird how that kind of flip-flopped
Semantics, kind of, right?
Director of analytics when I was with the XFL and stuff like that. That was like in the scouting department side. We were using a bunch of stuff when we had access to like PFF Ultimate data, and we were able to make like a bunch of playlists and cut ups and see like, hey, what is consistent and stuff like that. Like, what can we actually use as a metric that will tell us how good a player is, so that we can make a watch list and say like, okay, if we draw a line and there's a cutoff here, there needs to be a reason why the guys above that don't make it, or that guys below that do make it, and they have to be, kind of treated as exceptions in some sort of way, and there needs to be a why that isn't accounted for, kind of like in these measurements, and that's kind of what I was working on. Did stuff for Bleacher Report for a long time. I think I got my first Bleacher Report job when I was like 19. I think
Damn,
I was going.
nice.
I was going to community college. I blew out my knee like twice. I missed a bunch of school when I was in school. Really good at tests, high test scores, all that stuff. But like homework was
You weren't doing it.
So I knew, I was like, I'm definitely going to community college. I'm definitely not taking out like $50,000 a year to go for school. My family didn't come from money or anything like that, so they weren't going to help me with that. So just all my friends left to go to 4-year schools, and I'm back at community college. I didn't have anyone to hang out with unless I wanted to hang out with the high schoolers. That didn't seem like a good idea. So, I just kind of got to the work grind, started doing like breakdowns. People seemed to enjoy it. I got work. People paid me money. I was like, okay, I don't have to work at a party and rental center where I'm pressure washing. Can we curse on this? Manure off of farm equipment.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll take that. And just kind of kept doing it until people were like, yeah, we'll pay you more and you could do this kind of full time. Did stuff for Bleacher Report, got the XFL gig, and then pandemic happens.
Yeah.
XFL stops and the world keeps going. So I'm working at APC now. Yeah.
Heck yeah, man. You guys just stole Dusty Evely, so I see that you guys are making moves over here.
We did. I'm sorry, Aaron. Nagler.
That's a good pick. That's a good pick. Dusty's awesome.
Yeah,
but that's
Dusty's awesome.
Yeah, man. But that's cool. It's like I'm pretty sure me and Bernie can definitely relate to that. Like same thing, community college for me, the whole 9 yards. I'm still in school right now. I'm actually at school in Colorado State University Global Campus. So I'm still like, trying to finish up everything. But that's pretty cool, man.
It took me 10 years to get a 4-year degree. Because I just basically, I would go to school anytime work slowed down. And in this industry, I mean, you never know.
It's very much a roller coaster. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was 30 years old.
2022. So
yeah, I was 30 when I started my bachelor's program finally. So
there you go.
So I'm there with you, man. Just take your time, do your thing.
Oh yeah. That's badass, man. That's awesome, man. I love that. That's a journey, man. I was gonna say, and then now you're doing APC, and then just your content on Twitter is amazing. And all right, so seeing all that, and did you watch the Hard Knocks yesterday with the Giants? Did you watch that?
I've seen clips. I haven't seen all of it.
Okay.
Like I saw like we'd like to have Saquon back. I saw the like trade rumors thing where they're like elbowing like Dan Morgan and they're like,
conversations.
Yeah. All that stuff. But
he was talking about like his grandma likes Sam Hartman. And I'm like, dog, what? Like, he's like, she said he's cute. I'm like, all right, man. All right, dog. That's something you ain't got to talk about. But it was cool because like what you were talking about, how like the way you guys would take PFF and other programs kind of differentiate between players, right, based on grades, and they were showing that from like their pro personnel perspective of free agents, and they're like, okay, well, we have all these free agents, and they're showing like Josh Jacobs, they're showing all the running backs, right, and they're trying to show how Saquon matched up with like Mixon, Singletary, Jacobs, all these other guys, and just what you were explaining, it kind of gave me an idea, like, wow, that's exactly what we saw like on the show yesterday, where like it's so cool, where like they have all this like information, and they had to use that to somehow decide, okay, which guys could be the not only right fit, but also fit in our budget too. So that's pretty cool, man. For you to be like in the weeds with that, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we worked with a bunch of people. Like Trey Brown used to be a GM for one of our teams, or we called them DPPs, the director of player personnel, because the head coaches were also the general managers. They got oversight of
over everything,
all the XFL teams. But the DPP was kind of like the general manager position, basically, in the XFL. And Trey Brown, I think he interviewed for the opening with the Patriots the one that ended up going to like Elliott Wolf and stuff like that. And like Trey Brown, yeah, exactly. Trey Brown, easily the smartest person I worked for with the XFL in terms of like the DPPs that we worked with. Yeah. It was obvious that person is going to be like an NFL GM, and it's probably going to happen in like the next like 2 years and stuff. So I got to rub elbows with like a bunch of people who would, you know, either are going to be GMs or previously have been GMs and stuff like that. So that was nice. It was getting into, you know, the whole what a personnel space looks like, what kind of like the agent space looks like too. I don't envy any of them. Don't be an agent.
I was gonna say it seems like a lot of work, man, and like you got
a lot of trusting 20-year-olds with money that you give them with no strings attached, and hoping that in 6 years it ends up paying back and they don't leave you and all. Yeah, it's
man. I think about Jerry Maguire, I know that's dramatized, but I just feel like there's a lot of truth behind that, right? Where like you're like you literally were at their beck and call. That and what was the show with The Rock? Was it The Players or something like that? I forgot.
I never saw that. I've seen Jerry Maguire. That's based on Lee Steinberg, who's like Mahomes' agent and stuff now. And,
yeah, exactly. So like, so like some truth behind that, right?
Yeah,
but it's still crazy though. But man, okay, I was gonna say like, just to know that you kind of rubbed shoulders with some of these folks, it's pretty cool because when you see them kind of come up through the ranks, you're probably like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
I mean, I still root for all the former XFL. Like anytime Josh Johnson signs with another NFL team, he's going to sign with everyone at some point. Every time Josh Johnson signs with someone, I'm like, hell yeah, go Josh. Josh is funny because, you know, a lot of talk happened with like, I mean, we're just getting into story time here. This isn't really Packers related, but you know how they did like the whole like Deflategate thing, and they're like, you know, guys prepare their balls different ways and all sorts of stuff. They use this like tar that they get from like this place in New Jersey, and you know they blacken it out and stuff like that. Josh is a guy who just straight out the box, because he's never been able to really find a groove with any team. He's bouncing around
so
like, he's a guy no prep, just like literally fresh out the box. It still has like that weird slick film on it, and he's just throwing the ball, and that's just how he does it. And it's like, I've never seen that before.
I still remember like Rodgers. Remember he would overinflate the ball. Because he would say that he wanted it really, really tight because he just have big hands, right? And then you talk about Brady who had small hands, kind of, and he was like, "Oh, he deflated," and it's just crazy. And then you see someone would like not sand them down, but they would rub the hell out of the ball to the point.
Well, people do like, I mean, they take them through like basically like a sander, and you know they prep it in different ways, but to get that slick film off, honestly, is why they do that sanding thing. And Josh was like, nope, fresh out the box.
He's like, the hell with that
go. How much time does the team have with the ball before the game to do all this?
I mean, those equipment managers that's their full-time job, right? So, I mean, shout out to them. Yeah, I mean, they got to have like 200 balls prepared for the season. And if it rains, stuff starts getting weird. The kicking balls are totally different than the NFL balls. I know in the Canadian League right now, everyone's complaining because they have – I don't know if this is going to happen in the NFL at some point, but they have the microchips in them.
Yeah.
I could do like the down and distance type of stuff that everyone
They're looking into that. I think they are looking into that, yeah.
And all the kickers are complaining about it because they're like, it spins different. So like if you look at field goal percentages and PATs and all that stuff in Canada, it's way down right now, and everyone's blaming it on the balls. But
Andrew Carlson's blaming that too right now.
Just bring a different ball out for the kick, right? That solves that.
Seems simple enough. Seems simple enough.
You don't need the tech for the kick, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
You're making things difficult for no reason.
I guess like missed field goal returns then becomes a problem because like you still have to spot the ball in that situation.
Was it the Alabama
Iron Bowl, baby?
Yeah. So,
dude, that's one of the greatest college football plays in history, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah, that was insane. Yeah, that was absolutely insane. Seeing Alabama lose anytime is fun for me. I'm an LSU guy, so I have no love lost there at all. But dude, that's amazing. And like, so all right, so you have all this wealth of knowledge, and then that's why whenever you post things, I always listen, I always read your articles because I like you always have like an insight that not a lot of people have. And with you kind of seeing how things are going, I'm gonna have to let you get on your soapbox because when Evan Williams did get drafted, I was happy because we got a safety and I liked the way he looked, right? But I was very much on the Jalen Hicks guy from Washington State. I liked him a lot, and he was still on the board, right? So kind of, I'm Mr. like, draft industrial complex, just ridiculous. But what were your thoughts on the draft? And then like, you being the homer that you are when it comes to Oregon guys. I remember you said that the defensive guy there said that, we got one of the better players. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can pull up the text right now. Yeah. One of my buddies works at Oregon, and he hit me up like as soon as we drafted him, and he was like, he's the best guy on congrats on getting our best player on defense. He's so good, everything you want a football player to be. I mean, he was only there for a year too, right? Because his brother had played at Oregon, but he transferred up from Fresno State. Just seems like super competitive guy, athletic guy, gives you a lot of looks in practice and stuff like that. I think it's going to translate pretty well to special teams. I know his representation did not think that he was going to go that early. But they were like, great kid, like is going to help you in practice, all that stuff. I don't have like super high expectations for him right now in terms of like actually playing on the defensive side as a rookie, just because, I mean, you look at who's getting snaps, even in like OTAs and stuff. He got a couple first team snaps because, Xavier McKinney didn't come
out,
in the last OTAs and stuff like that. Or I think it was mini camp. But it seems like the pecking order right now, they're going to try to let Javon Bullard compete and try to take the job away from Anthony Johnson Jr. So, you'd figure Evan Williams is probably fourth at best on the depth chart right now at safety,
right?
For kind of a two-spot position since Keyshawn's going to play in the slot. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he makes, significant contributions on special teams. I kind of think that that's why they ended up drafting him. He can kind of play both safety roles, super athletic, super like grinder, like you're not gonna have to worry about him at all, like in terms of
like effort, even
when like effort when he's not in the starting lineup, anything like that. Like he's not gonna go off the rails because it's the first time that he's not been in the starting lineup or anything. His games, if you guys want to watch him, I mean, I think he got a lot better that Colorado game, which I think was like a month into the season. He got a couple of sacks in that. As like kind of like a run and chase guy, and that's really kind of when everything opened up for him. I wouldn't watch anything before that Colorado game because it kind of seemed like he's still trying to get, the ground under his feet a little bit, as being that 1 year transfer coming into a new defense, all that type of stuff. But yeah, he should be fun. As far as the draft overall, I mean, kind of predictable, kind of exactly what we wanted, right? I mean, if you would have told us, yeah, you're going to land Edrin Cooper and Javon Bullard in the second round, like,
no complaints.
How many times do we see that in mock drafts for months, right? So it's like thumbs up. You got the job done. Marshawn Lloyd was a little bit of a surprise to me in terms of him going that early, but it seemed like a lot of people liked him, right? We had Saban say that he was like the second best running back in the draft and stuff like that. Jordan Morgan, that's not a surprising pick. I mean, that's like a Packers offensive lineman. It's come out since like the Cowboys were considering him. The Commanders were considering him. I think it was the Cardinals were considering him. And then, the Ravens, who were a little bit further down in the first round, like really liked him. And there probably wasn't going to be a chance that he fell to him. So like people kind of made it seem like, that was a reach. But if you look at, what's happened since the draft, it's like that guy clearly was going to go in that range.
There's a lot of tackles that went right after him too. You're so right. Yeah. It just, True North Packer fans making fun of me because like when I was doing a draft party and when I was like, what you call it, like cherry picking picks, right? I was going to look and see who drop them. So when I saw the pick come across, I threw my phone and I was like, no, Cooper, did you get that? What are we doing? And then, and then I remember Mike Wall's comments on him and just, I was like enamored by Guyton and I was enamored by other tackles, right? So I was like, oh, him? But Andy had called it too. I think you had called it as well too. Jordan Morgan might have been a good pick for them, right? And so since then, I've been wrong every time. There's a guy I don't like. He's been good, so I'm okay with it. I'm clearly there's something going on there, so I'll take it.
I just remember the couple of times where I'm like, we took Amari Rodgers in the third round. I just don't know how he's going to get on the field on offense. And
he would have if Rodgers gave him a chance. Maybe I don't know. Him and Jace, man, I felt like those two third round picks were like. They just didn't get a fair shot because you know how 12 was. 12 was just seemed like maniacal when it came to the way he would handle guys, man. We
still haven't seen that with the Jets. I'm excited that we get that this year. He's blowing up on someone.
Yeah,
I don't know who it's gonna be, but
I can't wait.
Do you think Vegas has odds on that yet? Who Rodgers is gonna blow up on first?
I've been looking at the roster, and I think it's the tight end they drafted last year, Kuntz.
Yeah.
The guy who's like super athletic, but like does it like
10 RAS core.
That's his Degora. That's his Degora, where he's just gonna MF him once a game.
Yeah. I could so see that. Dude, Degora got no love from him. Like
none.
No, a 2021 playoff game where he throws the ball double coverage down that last play, right? Where Degora's wide open in the flat. Like he's wide open with nobody in front of him. He's like, nah, dog.
Nope.
Devontae's down there somewhere. I was like, what are we doing? So no, yeah, definitely Degora. I can see that. Yeah. Him or Jason Brownlee, the undrafted free agent wide receiver they had that they all love. I could see him kirking out on him too. I'm just waiting for it. I just want him to play so I can just see the drama unfold. That's it. I just want the drama. So you know what's gonna happen. You just know it's gonna happen. Like it's
in New York with all those primetime games.
Oh
yeah.
God, yeah. Oh yeah. Niners week 1. Oh baby, it's gonna be something else. How's a horse from a man? That's all I know. All right. So talked about the draft, and clearly I think Gutekunst did the right thing. He just kind of tried to fill holes, and some in the draft industrial complex, some may have been reaches, some may not have been. But like now seeing that, and obviously with your analytical head being put on, how have you thought about Jordan Love as he's developed over the last 4 years? And then what are you thinking about him as he going forward now?
Yeah, so I know some people who took some visits to Green Bay, not last offseason, but the offseason before, right? So Rodgers last year.
Yeah.
And that was when the staff, that people around the team could tell that the staff was like, yeah, we have something here. He's taken the step, like he can be an NFL starter. And I think that kind of matches with kind of what we've seen, right? Like the post the year after the Kansas City game, right?
Yeah.
Where the Kansas City game, it was clear. It was like, all right, they're playing man coverage. Love doesn't really have a way of beating that right now. When you can look at the Cowboys game and stuff like that now, and it's
night and day.
Dan's trying to play him in man coverage, and he's just taking advantage of him, right? So, that's kind of what I've thought is kind of since that marking point, like, okay, we might like actually have something here, and then going into the year, it's like, well, you can only tell so much through practice, right? So like they believe it in practice. We got to see it in the game. And second half of the season, I think it was the Chargers game. They always talk about it as the Steelers game, as kind of when they knew that he had kind of taken that next step where he can kind of translate all that those practice reps onto the field. And yeah, I mean, he's been on fire ever since. Like obviously the
Chargers game is a good call though. That's actually a real good call because there was some plays.
Yeah, it's the week after the Steelers game, but LaFleur and Goot keep saying that the Steelers game is when they knew that Love would kind of develop into who he is now. Obviously, there's some stuff that he's got to work out where it's like, the situational stuff, end of a playoff game, probably don't need to make that throw across your body and stuff like that. Yeah. That's fine. He's going to learn from it. Like he's in his first year as a true starter. I'm not too worried about that.
It was like the 2020 game where like Rodgers could have ran, the third down where he could have ran for it, and then he just like threw it, right? And we're like, oh, he could have ran for it, right? And that in that play, I felt like Nick Bosa was bringing down his neck, but he could have ran for it. In that second half with Zach Tom going out, what did you see based on what I know you probably talked this ad nauseum like months ago, right? But just like, was there something they did differently in that second half that was giving him trouble, or was it because Zach Tom went out and that just kind of threw off the rhythm?
I think just losing a pretty good pass protector there. Especially against the defensive line that all they want to do is penetrate, right? I mean, it's basically the same scheme that Hafley is going to want to run. I think that makes some differences, especially once you go down, right? Once they know, hey, they're passing, we can pin our ears back, like we can go after it. They have to score in the next, 5 minutes, whatever it is. Like we know they're going to try to throw the ball. I think that just changes the dynamics of the game. It is what it is.
I know, man. I just felt like Bosa like showed something about Rasheed Walker when he was lined up on Rasheed Walker, and then he said, "Yeah, this ain't working." And then he went over to Najee, and I'm like, "Oh crap, he's actually getting on Yosh," and he didn't do that like a couple years ago. And I was like, "Oh man," I was like, I don't know. I felt like Walker, he's not giving that job up anytime soon. So no, that's. I was wondering because like I'm really hyped up about the season. I'm really like ready to drop a lot of figurative bombs. I can't say that because I'm Indian, right? So I look like the wrong person to say that. But I'm saying like, no joke, like Kate, my girl Kate from Fantasy Football, Like, she's talked all this trash about Brock Purdy, and I am literally week by week going to be matching those two boys up, Love and Purdy, every week. I'm going to I need Love to outperform every week. I just need it so I can just talk shit. That's all I need right now. I just want to like just be coming every week, and it's pause. Straight up, I just want to draw. I want to bust them up. I just want to bust up the Niners, and I want to bust up this whole Brock Purdy is better than Love, because I don't think
he's not. He's not. The Niners have a great scheme and great skill players, and I mean, did you guys see the photos from Christian McCaffrey's wedding? And it's like him, Juszczyk, Kittle, like all these Shanahan is there, and it's like that's why Purdy's winning ball games, folks. I don't know if you guys pieced that together yet, but
I was like,
I mean, look at what Miami's another team that's kind of in the same type of position where it's, the quarterback isn't really what's making that engine go, right? And all we're hearing is that, hey, there's a lot of animosity between Tua's camp and the front office right now because they're not able to get a deal done. And it's like, if you give Tua that, $55 million per year contract, and how are you going to be able to afford Tyreek? How are you going to be able to afford Waddle on top of that? The running backs that all these schemes like to churn out and stuff like that. It's going to be a tough thing, especially when you need a good offensive line to run that offense, because everything is built off of run and run action. Like, if you can't run, you need to get your better offensive line. And if you're just tapped out from a cap perspective, you're screwed. Plus all the Sunday ticket stuff, which I know people are like, people see the number, right, and it's like 17 billion or whatever that the league is based, the teams are the league, but the league is going to have to pay out to victims of the situation. And like, that's not going to directly impact the salary cap.
No.
Okay, but if NFL Sunday ticket is no longer a thing that's allowed and teams have to sell their own out-of-market packages, NFL Sunday ticket makes them about $4 billion per year.
Yeah,
that's $4 billion that is taken out of the whole salary cap accounting. So salary cap goes down. You're paying Tua $55 million per year.
You're in trouble.
And you have to pay Tyreek and Waddle. Like, how are you going to make that work out, bud?
No.
How are you going to make that work out? So I don't know. I think there's some changes on the horizon of, if you can give these guys those massive contracts. Jordan Love's going to get it. Obviously, I mean, Green Bay really doesn't have anyone else to spend it on other than like Kenny Clark right now. Everyone else is under contract.
That's the one. That's the one. He deserves a third contract. And I think with this, like you were just saying about Jeff Hafley, with this new scheme, he's going to be – I think you're going to see a resurgence on his numbers and just the way he plays, because they've had to play so passively for the last 3.5, 4 years. They're not going to – based on everything we're hearing, it's a completely
moving him around, right?
Yeah,
he was like a nose tackle, then they move him to end again. Like, yeah.
It just, there was no way for him to get like any continuity on just like, okay, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm going to do. And then on top of that too, he wasn't like, TJ Slayton was inconsistent. Wyatt was inconsistent. Now you're going to, hopefully with another year with those two guys, they can kind of bring in some stability on the line with them, So, heck yeah, man. I can't wait, man. All right, Bernie, what you got?
Carl Brooks is my boy on the line, man.
Yeah.
I think he's going to take a huge step forward this season. I'm really excited about him. And then something else I wanted to bring up too was Josh Jacobs said, I think it was a day or two ago, about leaving a legacy. And then I saw some other stuff saying about how he's running good routes or running real routes now or something. What kind of impact do you think Josh is going to have on this offense? And, is the offense not going to skip a beat with losing Aaron Jones?
I don't know if he's as quick as Aaron, but I do think the biggest thing about Josh is how understated his size is, right? Like, he's like 220, probably game weight.
Yes.
And he doesn't move like a guy who's like 220, right? I still think that they're going to rotate those backs pretty often. I don't know if Marshawn Lloyd is going to get a whole ton of burn early on. I mean, we'll find out kind of like in the preseason, but I would expect them to still kind of like split carries a little bit between Josh Jacobs and A.J. Dillon, just because that's how this whole offense works. It's like San Francisco doesn't have a bell cow back. Like, they have McCaffrey, but they also still give carries to other people. Debo lines up in the backfield. How many times have you seen, Juszczyk in the backfield and McCaffrey in the slot or something like that? Miami's rotating everyone in that.
They got Jalen Wright. You know how mad I was? I wanted that guy so freaking bad. And I was like, Jalen Wright go there? Like, they don't need they don't need a Kamara 2.0. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, they got a 4x100 team, 4x400 team back there. So yeah, I mean, they're still going to rotate, but yeah, I mean, I assume Jacobs is going to be kind of used as a chess piece all over. Maybe they start doing a little bit more of the two-back stuff, depending on how much they trust Marshawn. Because one of the big things is like this really happened. What was it, 2 years ago or 1 year ago when people were super excited about like Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon being on the field together, and then they had like 4 plays out of it. And
the pony package.
And LaFleur was like, we can't put too much because like, what if one of them goes down and we just can't use it for that week and we practiced it and all that stuff. Like maybe having a quality RB3 like Marshawn Lloyd kind of allows you to actually be able to spend more time on that throughout the week, do a little bit more diverse stuff where, if one of those guys does go down, you still have a backup option who can, give you some looks there. So that'll be nice. I assume Jacobs is going to get back to his production. I mean, you watch that Raiders line. They had two guys. Like Michael Mayer was a good blocker.
Yeah.
At Notre Dame, he was not a good blocker last year in the NFL. There were so many plays. Him and then whoever the right guard. I think it was Parham was his name. The right guard for the Ravens. Yeah. No. He was an offensive lineman. And yeah, he was no good. And like. The Raiders really
patchwork lineman in Vegas, man. It wasn't anything like to write home about. That's for sure.
Yeah, they really tried to be like an inside run team, like run a lot of power, run a lot of ISO, just like kind of stuff between the tackles. But they just were not good enough at it, especially blocking at that right guard spot and at tight end, to really get anything going. Plus, he ended up dealing with a little bit of injury and stuff like that too. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ended up bouncing back. Like I'm not assuming that he's going to get 1,600 yards or whatever and make a Pro Bowl again, but I assume it's going to be a whole lot better than what he did with the Raiders last season, for sure.
Yeah, Deguara out there blocking. That's how Meyer looked like. Remember Deguara with his short-ass arms?
Yeah.
He couldn't touch anything. It was terrible. So I go in motion. I heart stopped every time. I was like, what's he going to do? He ain't going to do nothing. No, but I was going to say with the new additions, like Josh Jacobs, and you still got Emmanuel Wilson out there too, and then Lloyd. Like I just look at Lloyd. He just fits the bill of the guy that walks off the bus, right? Like he just fits that like running back.
You think? Yeah. He's like a Greek god. You're like, okay.
Straight up, man. I'm like, holy crap. And like I had my love for Jonathan Brooks and Jalen Wright, but I saw him. I was like, all right. And then Daniel Jeremiah is like, he's the best running back in the draft. I'm like, all right, well, when DJ says it, I can't really like argue, right? DJ's not been. He's more right than he is wrong. Right, he's like my Mike Mayock right now. So it was cool to see that, and just seeing the development of like, I feel like we're gonna get like a real big jump out of like Watson and Dobbs. I mean, I feel like Dobbs had that like Jordy Nelson like playoff like boom, right? Like Jordy did in 2010, like in the playoffs and Super Bowl, he goes off in that after he's off to the races. Are you feeling the same way about Dobbs? And do you think like him and Watson will make that jump?
I feel like everyone has their own receivers that they're like looking at.
Yeah, like Wicks, everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, even people being like Bo Melton. Bo Melton's looking really good this offseason. I'm like, I believe it. Like they spent years trying to kind of like cultivate this depth and all that stuff. And you're hoping year 3 for most of that group, right, is when it kind of like kicks in. For at least the 2 guys that you mentioned and Melton. I think Reed and Wicks have the highest upside of any of them, just based off of what I've seen so far. I mean, obviously Watson can move fast, right? No one's going to be able to match his speed or anything like that. But as pure receivers, I think those are the 2 that I'm keeping an eye on. But it also wouldn't surprise me if like Dobbs is able to put up like some like James Jones type of production like this year, where it's like
Hoodie Jones, baby, Hoodie Jones.
Yeah, where it's like maybe he gets like 800 yards, but he's catching like every touchdown, or Watson takes that next step. Like, both of those things would open up the offense a whole lot.
Damn, man, I'm hyped, man. Like, I just can't wait for week 1, and like just with everything going on, like I feel like we're gonna hit the ground running on offense, and then now we get to the my favorite time of all these podcasts talking about the defense, and I always preface it about I'm so happy Joe Barry's gone, because I am. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone on Twitter knows that too. Probably also people in my family who don't have idea who the hell Joe Barry is, but they know I don't like it. So like, based on what you've seen, like because I don't know how much at Boston College, like what he did on, like how much of what he wanted to do was shown on defense, if that makes sense, because it's just like the talent and just him being a head coach and like, having to be in so many different areas. What are you thinking from just what we've seen of him, other places as well as at BC, and then how do you think that's going to apply to what the Packers want to do?
Yeah, so I watched a bunch of it. I think he ran what he wants to run in certain situations. So, like, they didn't run a whole lot of base defense in the ACC because, like, there's just not a lot of teams out there in college football that are running with a true, tight end, hand in the dirt, and like a fullback or two tight ends, right? Like, think of like the top teams in that conference, right? Like Florida State, Clemson, all of them are spread teams. So most of the stuff that he's running, he has a nickel back on the field. Whether that translates to what he's going to want to run when Juszczyk and Kittle are out there, right? And McCaffrey's out there and Debo, and like all these guys can technically be ball carriers. Maybe you want to play in a true 4-3. I don't think you have answers in that situation. But if a team's out there with 3 wide receivers, I think we know kind of what he wants to run. And it's a whole lot of, it's what everyone says it is. It's a penetrating defensive line. They're going to want to play a lot of single high coverages, which means cover 3 when you're not blitzing, cover 1 when you are blitzing. A lot of the coverage stuff, like you can look at like Joe Barry, and like if you look at the numbers and they're not like indexed correctly, it'll say that he ran a lot of cover 3, but a lot of that cover 3 was like you're down a body because you're blitzing, right? It would be when they have 5 guys on the line of scrimmage, all of those guys are blitzing. You only have 3 underneath defenders compared to when you're in a 4-3 and you're only rushing the defensive line, you'd have 4 underneath defenders, and that's when we would get goofy stuff like Preston Smith in the slot in empty, and he's one-on-one with Devontae Adams with the 2-way go. Like those are kind of the situations where things will change, certainly. The other thing too is it seems like from what guys like Richard Sherman and Darrelle Revis and stuff say, like he preps you a lot on like what the concepts are going to be out of certain formations, or like we get a empty 3-by-2 look, like this is what we're expecting. Situations where the Raiders did that to us last year, right?
Yeah.
And Joe Barry says like, hey, we don't have a check for that because we don't want to check to everything, right?
And it's like, dog,
Hafley's going to check. Hafley's going to check to that because everyone on the field is going to know, like, hey, they want to run looky, which is the 2-way go play with Devontae Adams in the slot at the number 2 spot and empty. And I think that's going to go a long way. So we'll have to see kind of how quick that secondary is going to be able to adapt, because not a lot of these guys have played in that system. Like McKinney just came out of a heavy man blitz system, right? Bullard just came out of a quarter system that was basically like running what Joe Barry was running, right? Yeah. So those safeties are kind of a big question mark for me right now, just in terms of like how fast is it going to click at the beginning of the season. But I think that the scheme overall is probably going to be a lot better.
There was one thing that Hafley said that throws me off. And every time he says it, I just like get tingles, but I have no idea what the hell it means. And he's like, man press, which obviously I know, right? But he's like open close. What does the open close mean? Because every time he's like man press, open close, I'm like, yeah, dog, fuck yeah, I'm down. What's open close?
I think what he's talking about is the middle of the field. That's how a lot of people
like
talk
the Robert
about
kind of thing. Is it like
yeah. So if you imagine my hands or safeties, right? If you have 2 safeties high, like Barry usually would have, they would actually consider that middle of the field open because you have this gap where my head is, if you guys can see that, right? And you could throw posts and stuff into that, and then middle of the field close would be you rotate these guys. One of these guys is in the box, one guy's in the middle of the field. You at least have a guy covering the post ball. But what that does kind of open up is deep crossers, right? That's one of the issues that the team hasn't really had in recent years. The Vikings game, what was it?
Vikings game, 200 yards, yeah.
I mean, that wasn't a schematic issue, not to cape up for Joe Barry as much as it was just like the safeties not executing and passing off the concept.
Yeah, they had no idea. They just knew how to. Yeah, like you could just tell like Savage is out there, like he was just, I don't know what to do. with my hands like Ricky Bobby or some shit. What the hell are we doing, dog?
So deep crossers isn't something that Packers fans have really had to worry about for a long time, because of the nature of the defense. Now it is going to be a problem if their pass rushers don't get to the quarterback.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's all that's kind of what everything turns out into. It's basically a stopwatch timer as soon as you snap the ball, and it's like, oh, they're taking a deep drop back. They're going to be trying to throw a deep crosser. We really don't have a guy who can, at least in theory, from a schematic standpoint, can really cover that route if he gets the protection, and then everything just comes down to, is the defensive line getting to the quarterback fast enough or not? And that's why, Hafley is so emphasized on, hey, we're penetration in the defensive backfield. Like that's all we're worried about for those guys up front. And
him
that's
saying like
how it translates.
And him saying like disrupting the receivers' routes too, right? Like man press, busting up the routes, like gaining their face, because that's more time that you give the defense line, right? Which makes sense. And
100%. Like messing up the timing. I mean, how many times have we seen a quarterback double clutch and then it's like that's it? And
it's all she wrote. Yeah, and then he's done. But then like 3.5, 4 years, we just see these guys 3rd and 2 and they're 15 yards off. You're like, what are we doing? What are we doing? So I think that's what we're all excited for, is to see how the defense shows up week 1. Obviously, it's week 1. We're gonna, he's gonna need time to adjust. Like you were saying, I think Isaiah McDuffie is probably the only one that actually has any experience in this defense, right? Because he was with him at BC, and then minus that, don't really have much else. And it's just gonna be crazy to see. Like I keep hearing they could put Quay with the green dot. I kind of wish, man, they give it to somebody else so he can just run, and he's not gonna worry about like.
I don't think the green dot is as big of a.
Is it? Okay, all right.
I don't think so, because I mean, again, like so many of the checks and stuff like that are going to come from the secondary. Mm-hmm. The communication stops 15 seconds before, or 25 seconds before, the play clock ends. So you only get he's basically just relaying the call, and then, defense isn't as wordy as the offensive side because they're not double calling stuff and, doing the can stuff. Like, you're basically getting 3 words out there. It's like, what's the front? Is there a blitz? This is the coverage. So, okay. I mean, it's just spitting 3 words out there. It's not rocket science. Sorry.
I think every time I heard like Jordan Love when he was like with Michael Parsons on Radio Row, and he was talking about the plays, and he was just literally like, I'm like, there's no way the defense is like that, obviously, right? But I'm just like, Jesus, no. They remember so much shit. Like, that's insane to me. I'm like, wow, like, that's what happens. You get to NFL, I guess it gets complicated as hell.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the magic of this system. And it's funny because if you look at outside of LaFleur, these guys don't come from quarterback backgrounds, right? Like, right. LaFleur was a receivers coach. McVay was a tight ends coach. McDaniel
was a wide receiver coach at Denver. I think he's
So it's interesting to me because all of these guys gravitate toward kind of like pass catchers. In these long worded play calls. The reason that they're long is because they're telling every wide receiver what to do.
Oh, right? I see.
And it's also leading to these wide receivers hitting the ground running. I mean, a decade ago, right? It's like, you can't – tight ends were kind of treated the same way as wide receivers. Right. Where it's like you can't really expect them to have a whole lot of production before like year 3 or year 4. And now we're seeing rookie receivers go for 1,000 yards, and it's not like no one's blinking. And I think a lot of that has to do with that, where it's like we're telling them exactly what to do so that they can hit the ground running type of situation.
We've come very far from the MVS Jamon Moore days. And that was a struggle, man. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Who was the kid for Cal? Who was like
Trevor Davis.
Trevor Davis, yeah.
Oh God, I remember when Sam Seal came out. He goes, "Yeah, he runs a 4. A lot of people want to play as a man press, and they're not gonna be able to do that with him out there." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And then nothing ever happened.
If he gets on the field, we'll see.
Yeah, seriously. Oh my God, I was on that train too. I'm not gonna lie, I was on that train when he was on that back there doing the punt returns, and we got Ron Zook's bitch ass out there, and I'm just like, oh yeah, this is how you gonna do it, and then yes, that was terrible, man. Oh man.
But hey, before we get too far away from the defense, True North Packers fan had said something about Eric Stokes. Tell me why he'll have a rebound season. And then True North Packers fan also said, LVN needs to take a big step forward this season. So maybe we can talk about Stokes and LVN and quick before we get away from the defense completely.
Justice was the biggest defensive, we don't need defensive back. We don't need Cooper DeJean. We don't. And every time I saw him tweet this, I'm not going to lie, you were breaking my heart. I'm like,
it pissed Packers fans off.
Yeah.
But they're spending money on 4 of them. They're spending money on 4 quarters already.
So he was proven right. He was proven right.
The Stokes thing is all health, and I know you guys don't want to
hear
that.
I agree with that. Yeah,
I understand that it's not a satisfying answer. A lot of people are like, well, what happens if Jair goes down? Guys, there's no backup plan if Jair goes down.
Yeah,
that guy has the second highest cap hit on our team up until I think he's still the highest paid corner in the NFL. You don't have a guy off the bench who can replace that.
Trent didn't beat it, right? Trent McDuffie didn't beat it, right? I don't think he did.
I don't think so. No. I think it was Winfield beat it.
That was Winfield, yeah. $96 million,
safety, yeah. So he doesn't count as a corner.
That's not the same thing. Maybe Ladarius Sneed, maybe? I don't know. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm not bad.
But, yeah, so corner, I think a lot of it is just health. As far as outside corner goes, I really do like what Carrington Valentine brought to the table. I don't understand why people were not very happy. I mean, they were playing in a more cornerback-friendly defense, too, because they weren't asked to, jam up wide receiver. I mean, if you're playing 6-8 yards off a wide receiver, you really don't have to worry about the deep ball, right? So, they weren't really putting stress tests. But I thought him and Ballantyne both did good off the bench last year. Yeah, I mean, for what they had to do, I mean, I don't really see how you could complain that much. Stokes for sure. I mean, again, big health concerns like that. That's going to be a whole lot of it. LVN does need to step up. I thought he showed a little bit of improvement when he, the second half of the season kind of unfolded. I think LVN is a guy who's going to get helped a lot by being in a 3-point stance. If you watch his stuff, even back to Iowa, he's so much better in a 3-point stance than out of a 2-point stance. He seemed legitimately uncomfortable in a 2-point stance, and now that he's not worrying about that, I think he's just going to be able to penetrate into the backfield, and that's going to help him a lot. I worried a whole lot more about Preston transitioning into this kind of defense than I do about LVN. I wouldn't be surprised if LVN kind of ends up taking the reins from him because Preston, one, they adjusted his contract, right? Which kind of shows you that they were like, hey, we need to have a talk at the very least, right? About kind of our concerns moving forward. But he was always valuable because of how well-rounded his skill set was, that he was this long guy who can set an edge. He can still get after the passer a little bit. But if you need to drop him into coverage, which a lot of 3-4 teams have to do with one of their linebackers, because if not, then you're rushing 5 every play, which means you're down a guy in coverage. He could be a guy who can kind of float out there. Maybe you don't want him in the slot against Devontae Adams, right? But he can drop into coverage a whole lot more than like a Rashawn Gary can, right? When Rashawn Gary can't, play contain and run and also drop back into coverage, right? LVN is going to be in a position where it's just like shoot. And, you're coming off, the outside arm of a tackle. We want you to get in the backfield and don't worry about anything that goes outside you because now we're in a single high defense, which means there's a safety in the box and he's going to be the guy who's responsible at, setting the edge on that tight end. So I think that's going to help him a lot.
Right on. I like that idea of just pinning his ears back and letting it and just getting at it. Love that.
I mean, he's a freak. You can't.
Yeah, he's a freak. Dude.
Yeah, he is a freak. And he was only 20 when he was drafted, or did he?
21. He was 21.
He's very young. He was
LVN,
young,
right? LVN was 21, I think. Yeah,
he was a young 21 when he was drafted.
Like he was just turned 21, and just the way he's built, he's not. I mean, basically, kind of looks like a Nick Bosa 2.0, physically and probably politically. Okay, we won't get into that. But
I have a funny LVN story.
Oh, please.
We were at the combine. Yeah, it would have been 2 years ago, and he was locked out of his hotel. It was dumping rain, and he's walking back to his hotel. He's got his little. It's basically Spanx, right? That they're like running in.
Yeah.
And he's just getting dumped on, and he's like shaking the door, cannot get the thing open. And he actually was staying at the same hotel that another one of our buddies from APC, Tyler Brook, was staying
Tyler,
there.
yeah.
Tyler scanned him in so that he didn't die of hypothermia or whatever that day. So.
He's out there like he drenched in like the spectacles.
Yeah.
I just had a visual. I was like, that's terrible. That's terrible.
You just see this Hercules looking dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Unable to get
his
through.
hair the way it is, probably all drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to seeing because we're running a 4-3, and it's like we didn't really get very much outside linebacker help. We got more interior help, right? But just seeing how a lot of the outside linebackers will probably be more in the dirt and having the ability to play on the line, playing next to Kenny, and just having more options there, I think is pretty cool. Colby Williams is he I guess he beefed back up again, right? And
that's what he said, yeah.
Yeah, and so if he's at 290, because he came in at 278, I want to say.
I think he said he was down to 270 by the time the season started, which is not surprising because these guys are. If you guys are unfamiliar with kind of how this works out, right? The heaviest you're going to be is when training camp starts. Exactly. And then it's all downhill from there because you're not adding any body mass. I mean, you're burning so much just off of practice and games and stuff like that. Right. There's not a whole lot of time to just be able to lift weights and recover before another NFL football game when you're playing once a week. So, these guys shed weight like crazy.
Damn, that's still crazy though. I was gonna say because so whatever, even when Rashawn came in, what was he 278, 280? I want to say, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was down to 255, 260. And then I wonder if he's beefing back. I mean, I saw his videos. He looked like he beefed back up, but I would think they would want him to gain weight, right? If he's going to be on the line. But
I mean, you're rushing the passer every single play if you're a 4-3 defensive end. You're not necessarily doing that if you're an outside linebacker. There's so many ways that you're worried about setting the edge. You're worried about dropping back into coverage, all that type of stuff that things kind of get a little finicky. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at what the Niners do, what the Jets do, the Texans, right? That's another team that's doing this.
Yeah.
They have a lot of small pass rushers, right? Randy Gregory was out there. Will Anderson is not a big dude. The Jets drafted that kid out of Iowa State who's 240 pounds, right? Yeah, exactly.
That was crazy.
So, you don't have to have a big defensive end in this game. The days of – I know everyone here is 4-3 defensive end, and correctly, if you're watching Packers football, the first name that comes to mind is Reggie White, right?
Yeah.
But kind of gone are those days where, hey, we're trying to beat a deep crosser because the middle of the field is wide open in this sport because we're not taking heads off when wide receivers catch those balls anymore.
Right.
Everyone has to, pass rush off of the edge. So we don't need a Eric Armstead or something like that coming off the tackle.
Do they still keep the same weight kind of thing? Remember how back in the day for 3-4, right? If you had an end, you're at 290 to maybe 300, right? And now when I'm 4-3, I mean, they always say it's between 250 to 275, give or take. Are those ranges still the same, or is it a little bit less now because of the fact that you do need more athletic players in those positions?
I think weight's going down at the edge position and at inside linebacker. But I don't think it's going down on the interior defensive line.
No, if anything's going probably up, right?
Yeah, the interior defensive line, I think everything is – the whole pipeline is coming from college. And you look at the top teams in college football, the offensive lines are getting bigger. You cannot afford to get smaller. I mean, if you watch, the Georgia, Alabama, all those teams, so many of those guys are 6'8", 330 on the offensive line.
Monsters,
man. What? You're dude, our defensive linemen have to be, at minimum 290 pounds.
Amaris Mims, 6'8", 340, and he looked like a basketball player. And I'm just what the hell?
I saw this dude this week. He's 6'11", and he was on Bronny's AAU team, and he's going to go play tackle at Georgia. I'm what are you even doing here, man?
6'11"? Dude, go in there.
You can't throw the ball over that guy.
Yeah, there's no way he has handles at all. He's gotta have the worst dribble in the world to be 6'11".
He has to be. He has to be so bad at basketball because I'm sorry, you're 6'11", you're playing the NBA one way or another. You're playing ball, dog. You ain't playing football. What?
Yeah. But yeah,
Jones, he's not even that big.
That's the status right now, man. Everyone wants to get big on the defensive line or on the offensive line, and that has some ramifications. And sometimes, hey, if the Packers are willing to zig where other teams zag and all they care about primarily is pass protection, then like, oh, hey, Zach Tom fell into our lap. Oh, hey,
yeah, that's true.
Jacob Monk, we got him in the 5th round. Like, he might be a half decent offensive lineman. Like,
that's my next question, is because you are a former center, so you know how it is. I have a hate campaign on Josh Myers. Just have because
he's playing his best ball.
Okay, 1265. I don't want to hear that. Yeah. Okay, because that's all I keep hearing. Okay, but what is your thoughts on him? Because I know we hear that company line from them and from LaFleur and Goody and Stenovich and Marcus. But like, what do you think? Do you think he was playing his better ball in the second half of the season? And like, do you really think that Jacob Monk has a real great opportunity to maybe upset him in that position?
I don't know, because the way that they're rotating the center position now, it seems like they're pretty confident in Josh Myers at center, but then also Elton Jenkins and Zach Tom are the guys who are getting looks there instead of like a Jacob Monk, right? So, I don't know how much of a chance he's actually going to get this season unless some injuries start to pile up, because I do think Monk has to play center at the next level, at least long term. Like, maybe he'll be able to pinch hit for you at guard if you're shallow there and there's some injuries and stuff like that. But beyond that, I don't think you want him playing anything other than center. As far as my thoughts on Myers, I think he's wildly inconsistent, and I don't know why the coaching staff goes to bat for him so much. If they were, I mean, maybe it's like a truth serum type of thing where it's like, they wouldn't actually admit it in public, but this is their line of thinking. If they had come out and said, Jordan Love's a first-year starter, we don't want him having to call all the protections, we want some continuity at center and quarterback for him, we don't really want to shake up the center position.
Then I will with that.
I could live with that.
I could live with that, yeah.
So I kind of think that that's their line of thought, but they're also not saying that. So I don't know if that's actually their line of thought. But I would accept that. I mean, if they said that, I'd be like, okay.
I don't like it, but I get it. Like, because when I see him out there and he's like blocking, but there's no one in front of him, I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, what are you doing to me right now? Like, and
I think he's inconsistent. I think he's very inconsistent.
And people have said the whole like Creed Humphrey thing too, right? And like, oh well, they don't want to admit that they missed on him. But I was like, I don't think they look at it like that, right? And
I don't think they care. I mean, they're so far into it. Like,
at this point, it doesn't make a difference.
They're risking games for not taking Creed Humphrey 3 years ago. That doesn't make any sense.
None.
I understand people saying they want Creed Humphrey, and like Creed Humphrey was more of like a Packers type offensive lineman than
Josh was.
Yeah, because
Josh was too big for the. I mean, just everything about it just felt wrong. Like they literally thought they're going to hit.
Humphrey's a really good pass protector. That's usually what they end up looking at, like stuff like that. But I don't think they care. I mean, they went to the playoffs with a first-year starting quarterback. They don't care about Creed Humphrey PR. That's not going to cost anyone jobs in Green Bay. So, I don't think they really care that much.
That's fair. That's a good point. So I'm waiting for Josh to get just Royce Newman gone and Josh demoted or playing right guard.
Royce might be cut this offseason.
I hope so.
I don't know if you guys have.
Better.
I saw your article on that thing. Yeah, about the.
Yeah, I think the union made a mistake. And I work at a union. I've been the representation for like the SB Nation NFL stuff and all that. I'm generally pro labor, but I think they made a mistake when in 2020 they rushed and got ink on paper on the new CBA, which is totally fine. Like, I understand, there was a lot.
Had to. Everything's so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. But one of the issues is going to be this proven performance escalator, which is different than what you see at the end of the year when they're like, hey, these guys, played all these special team snaps, and Brock Purdy is going to make this much money because he was the last pick of the draft, all that stuff. The proven performance escalator is basically like a 3-year average. And because Royce Newman played a lot his first year, he's going to get like a $3 million pay bump this year, which doesn't make sense because now he's a backup. But because he played those snaps already, now that's going to be working against him. Plus, it's unguaranteed money, which means the Packers can clear it and it doesn't hurt them at all. So I do think that there's a real chance that Royce Newman could get cut this offseason because if they're looking for money, so many of their big contracts are already reworked outside of, the Kenny Clark deal. which I think he has like a $28 million cap hit right now, just because he's like the only guy who like is coming off his second contract and hasn't been extended yet.
Yeah.
They can create cap space that way, but then the Jordan Love stuff, that's going to cost money. And salary cap, immediately. If they're looking to cut money, especially if they think the salary cap is going to go down next year because of, the NFL Sunday ticket stuff that we talked about, an easy way to get rid of that, or an easy way to clear up cap space, is Royce Newman's salary just being off the books entirely. Because basically I think his salary like tripled, quadrupled, 5x, like something in that range.
Yeah.
And he's still a backup.
You wrote it up. I remember you wrote it up, and I just was like beside myself. I was like, wait, how's this dude getting paid more money for not even playing and being trash?
Yeah, I think the union wanted their proven players to get a little bit more money in their pocket, but they needed to do it in a way like the AJ Dillon, the exemption stuff, right? Where it's like, hey, you can give him this much money and it doesn't account on the salary cap and stuff like that. All of this is accounted for, and it's, unguaranteed. It just puts these guys in a bad spot. I mean, otherwise, Newman probably for sure makes the team. And I think that's going to be a real issue for the union moving forward.
It'd be an issue for me too, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, man. As I always do, I
just want to be
respectful of everyone's time. And we're an hour in, so I have one more question for you, and I'm sure Amar will throw one more your way too, Justice, before we wrap it up. I got to ask about what I think is going to be eventually become the best tight end duo in the NFL. What step forward do you think Musgrave and Kraft take forward this year in year two? What can we expect from these guys?
I'm really excited about them. As far as like next steps, I mean, Kraft, I would like to see how they use them on the field together, because it felt like Kraft's breakout happened while Musgrave was off the field, right? Mm-hmm. So how they're used together is going to be interesting, because I always thought kind of ideally Kraft is like your hand in the dirt type of guy out of the two, but they didn't really use him like that, right? Like they really used Musgrave as like the wide tight end, and they had, Kraft be kind of like the motion guy. He's off the ball. He's, in the backfield as a fullback type of situation. Like put Musgrave in the slot, or line him out as like the X by himself on the sideline, and take advantage of defensive backs that way, and have Kraft with his hand in the dirt. Like that's kind of how I envision them being used the best. But we'll have to see how that ends up working out.
Yeah. I'm stoked for him, man. We talk about Kraft all the time, how he's just a maniac, man. And I'm glad that there's football in this world for him, because he might be in prison otherwise.
Hockey or something.
If you guys didn't see his stuff at South Dakota State, I would tell you guys, go watch the highlights from him.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's He's so thick, funny. Man. They're running screens to him, like delayed stuff. Like they almost used him as like a screen running back in the middle of the field, and it was so fun to watch, because that boy,
like Debo, man, he was so multifunctional. It was crazy, and even Watson, Christian Watson's dad was talking about it, because of all the time, because North Dakota, South Dakota, right? Mm-hmm. And he was hyping him up big time too. He said, "That Jack Rabbit's no joke," and I'm like, "Yeah, I believe him." Man. Highlights. He is, and just hearing him talk about blocking and sounding like a 50 Shades of Grey murder.
Yeah, he's a psycho.
Yeah.
What did he say? He's like, I like watching their breath leave their body, or something crazy like that.
Yeah. Relax, dog. Christian Bale, freaking American Psycho. This is too much, man. What you doing?
I will say the one thing I will hope to see from Musgrave soon is him break tackles, because that's one of the biggest things. That's the difference between both of them, right? It's like
stay on his feet.
Yeah, Musgrave is going down every single time on contact, where like Kraft is like, all right, where's the next guy? Yeah.
Jump over him, we'll go through him, one or two.
A couple times Musgrave didn't even need somebody to hit him for him to fall over.
Yeah.
Musgrave's just like, he seems so delicate. Like, I know he's like a real big ass dude, and he's fast, he's strong, right? But just for some reason, I just feel like, man, he's like a swan out there, man. I just feel like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he is a size speed freak, and he's a matchup mismatch all day. But it just I agree. Like he's not a sucker at all. He's not soft by any means. But he was playing with a lacerated kidney, and he was still trying to go out there and play. Like, you didn't give it to him. Like he's a beast. But I agree. Like using him and I hate using this. I want to say pre-knee injury Jimmy Graham. Using him like that, where you just have him lined up everywhere, because there's very few linebackers, safeties, or corners that can run with him like they do. It's just rare.
Or if, like, again, you just line them up at X and they have to press him, and it's like
they did that right in the Cincy game. They did it like in one. What's the Cincinnati playoff game? Preseason game. I think they did that. They played them at that. Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff that you can do with both of them on the field. I just don't know if you want to use them the same way as you did last year, where Kraft is the the off the ball guy and Musgrave is the hand in the dirt guy. I think there's way more creative ways to create chaos for other teams.
Yeah. All right. Elmer, what you got, man?
My last question is, all right, so I'm a big Rich Bisaccia guy, but I'm also feeling like he's on his hot seat, right? And I've also, as you could tell from some of the folks in the comments, I'm always hating on Anders Carlson just because I just want him to have the Daniel Carlson resurgence. I do. The kid that they got basically cut from the Lions, I think it's James Mitchell. I think that's his name. He's the kicker from Michigan. Do you know anything about him, and what are your feelings about the special teams for this year?
James Turner. And Turner. So I talked to Jeff Risden, who covers the Lions. When kind of the waivers stuff happened. He's got a big leg. He seemed like he was doing good in camp. They just ended up, they ended up signing Bates, who's kind of like the biggest prospect in the UFL, and that kind of displaced him. They don't want to have three guys going into training camp, so they got rid of one. Green Bay obviously made the switch there too. Big leg guy, seemed to, arrow is trending up. If you look at his college stats, it seems like he's pretty productive. Like he kind of has the profile of a draft pick, so I would assume that he's considered one of the better rookie kickers. As far as the Bisaccia stuff, he's probably on the hot seat a little bit. I think the Keyshawn stuff helps him out a lot. Yeah. We'll see how he handles the kickoff changes. I will say quickly, it is becoming very apparent we're going to get a whole lot of just touchbacks again with this new kickoff rule, which is disappointing because this is what we were pitched it was not going to be. But essentially, so I'm a little biased, and I'm fine admitting that because, I worked with a team that did the XFL changes on the kickoff back in 2020.
Oh, cool.
One of the big things is that we had the touchback at the 30 and returns were coming back to the 29. So there was still, it didn't matter if you kicked or not. If you felt good about it, go for it. We also had a hang time rule. So the ball had to be up high enough for a certain amount of time or you would get penalized. The NFL got rid of the hang time rule and they moved back the kickoff, but they didn't move back the touchback. So now touchbacks are going to be more incentivized for the kicking team than the returning team. And because there's no kickoff, we're basically going to get long squib kicks if we do get actual kickoffs. So it's going to be basically what we're going to be watching is long squib kicks where returners have to quickly field the ball or just let it bounce to the back of the end zone, which will only come back to the 20, or it's just going to be straight up kicked out of the end zone, no real attempt at letting the return team have a chance at it, and that'll come back to the 30 because the average return will probably go to the 35. That's not obviously what teams on kickoff are going to want to do. So I don't know. I kind of think it was a mistake. You either had to adapt the rules wholesale or
just keep it the way it is.
Yeah, just keep it the way it is because I think it's going to incentivize kick touchbacks even more. So, a little disappointing.
I know. I was going to say, a lot of hype has been put into it, and I'm really looking forward to see how it plays out in preseason. But you're right, though. Who knows what's going to happen? If that happens, then it defeats the whole purpose of what they were trying to do. So,
yeah. And I think Florio wrote about it. I wrote about it a month before Florio wrote about it because I had talked to, obviously, some of the XFL people who were very interested in talking to special teams coordinators and stuff like that. That was their response. It was because I think I brought it up after the Chiefs special teams coordinator was we're going to use that safety
Yeah, Justin
right?
Reed. Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is this going to look like? Why is this so much different than what we did? And I started poking around, and the consensus I reached was you're getting one of two plays. You're getting a long squib kick that is basically like the returner instantly has a chance to kick it or return it, or he's going to muff it, right? Or he just lets it go and it bounces out the back of the end zone, or you're just going to get a straight up, touchback.
Damn, man. I don't know. I can't wait, man. It's going to be fun to see because.
But the NFL is like, it's too late to implement rule changes. It's like, is it? I don't know. It's July.
No, you can still do it.
You guys haven't had camp yet.
Like to send memo out, call it a day. Like, people are right now just getting ready for training camp. They'd be fine. They could make them rule change they want. They just be
their profession, man. You're telling me it's somebody else's at your job. You never got a phone call. Hey, we're gonna put cover on the TPS reports now.
Right.
You make that change immediately.
Yeah. Get that all the damn time, man.
But hey, Justis, I want to say, hey, thank you so much, man, for coming and joining us on Coast to Coast here. We'd love to have you back during the season. If
hit me up. You guys know where to get me.
Heck yeah, man. We're going to be trying to crank out 2 episodes a week here once the season hits. And man, I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose there with all that knowledge you were giving us, man. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys got to slow me down sometimes. Sorry about that.
No, man, you're great, man. You're
awesome. Man, I like it. Yeah.
It's good though. And that's the way people can go back. We have on Apple and Spotify, so they'll have other ways to make sure to pause, rewind. They can slow down the play speed too. So they'll be all right. They'll be okay, man. But no, man, hey,
listen on 2 times speed like a psycho, like Ben Solak.
I
can't believe people do that.
I was like, dog, I do 1.25. That's about it. But anything more than that, you crazy as hell. No, thank you. Mm-mm. But thank you so much, man, for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. You're awesome. And can't wait to have you on again. And looking forward to seeing your tweets when training camp starts and all the great material you put on Acme Packer Company, man. You're just awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Have a good 4th, guys.
Happy 4th.
Call an Uber.
Yes. Damn right. Go Pack, baby.
Yeah, and always, go Pack, go.